Hi, welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers. I'm Mark Owen, and each week I invite a panel of business experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's happening in their own individual business, their own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. Before I start, I'd just like to thank our fantastic sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors, and we couldn't do the show without them. Basically, we couldn't run the website without them, because without our advertisers and sponsors, we just wouldn't be able to do it. So anyway, big thanks to all of them. Okay, if you like the show, please like, subscribe, and share. Right, let's meet the panel. We've got the Right Reverend Rachel Treweek, the Bishop of Gloucester, which is this, it's like having the CEO of the church that covers all sectors of society from cradle to the grave. So we'll find out all about the business of God here in Gloucester. We have Enzo Mora, MD of the Mortgage Brain, the company with 110 staff with a turnover of approximately 6 million. And we'll find out the latest news of what's happening in the mortgage and the housing market from him. We have Heath, Gunter, the CEO of Cheltenham Bid. Lots going on in Cheltenham at the moment. Let's be honest about it. Cavendish House closing. We got the observation wheel, which is a good news story. So we'll find out about that. And also the latest footfall figures as well from Cheltenham High Street. And finally, never last not least, we have Ian Eggleton. He's a partner at Evans Jones, property and planning consultant. And Ian is specialising in the sort of building and access section, especially in the education sector as well, hotel and hospitality sectors. Okay, right, let's have a quick peek at what's making the headlines, courtesy of the BBC. Okay, the Financial Times. Starmer U-turn slashes 28 billion yearly green spending promise to 4.7 billion. The Guardian, furious Starmer stages U-turn on 25 billion green investment pledge. The Times, Starmer angers left with Labour's green reversal. The Daily Mail, can you ever believe a word Sir U-turn says? The Daily Express, unleashed. PM vows to call out Starmer's dirty tricks. You can see the theme in the Nationals today. The Mirror, nation in decay. Terrible story. The Eye, Post Office admits second IT scandal may be linked to wrongful prosecutions. The Metro, absurd arena bomber denier. And the Daily Telegraph, Biden can't remember when he was vice president, which is a bit worry for all of us, isn't it? The Sun, after VR farce, a balmy blue Sinbin blue what? And the Daily Star, I'm at war with frisky frost foxes. Don't you just love the Daily Star? Okay, thanks ever so much for joining us, guys. I would actually like to start with the story about President Biden before we go on to the other news. But just a quick ask the panel: when is too old? So, has Biden had it? I'm going to ask you first, Ian, very quickly.
Yeah, I think Biden has had it. I think which means we'll probably end up with Trump, Mark. So, wishing to start with a bad news story, but this actually links into another story I saw in the Sun. Engelbert Humperdinck apparently is aiming to play Glastonbury at 87. Again, too old. The demise of Glastonbury. Come on. So yeah, I'm afraid it would seem Biden. My worst fear for Biden is that he's a weak opponent to Trump. So yeah, too old for me.
Heath, what do you think? Biden too old? Should he stand down?
I think Biden. Yeah, just looking at him and looking at how he speaks on stage. He just seems to forget his words. It doesn't seem like America at the moment has a powerful leader. But in general, it obviously depends on how good the person is. So you could be 90, but really powerful. So I don't think you can make a sweeping statement by saying at 80 you can't be president. It really depends on the person. But yeah, looking at Biden, I don't think he's making much sense at the moment.
No, totally. Rachel?
Well, I would start where Ian started with. I think it's the choice of leaders. It's not great, is it? But I don't want to be ageist. Just following on from what Heath said, I think for me, often old age brings wisdom. So I'd want to separate out is Biden too old? It's more about, is Biden the right man for the job? And old age can be fabulous, but I just want to keep those things separate because old age can be about wisdom.
There we go. Okay, Enzo, you can say I totally agree with you.
Well, I do. It's not an age thing, but it's a competency thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Totally, and that is what's really worrying the free world at the moment. Let's be honest about it. Okay, well, let's go crack on with the papers. Let's start with you today, Ian. So, what have you picked out for the main stories today, please?
Okay, ignoring Engelbert Humperdinck. I have read into the papers, but you'll see there the front page is all about Starmer's reversal as they're playing it. It does read that, you know, we have a very right-wing press, don't we? Starmer's on the front page of all of them, except obviously the Mirror, which is talking about foxes. So what I want to talk about is that story, but also to bring some balance to that, I think it's you know, our government and probably our next government aren't really getting to grips with the whole green agenda. So if you look into some of the detail of what Starmer's doing, the Warm Homes Plan was part of the 28 billion. And that was, as part of that, there was a 6 billion spend on insulating our existing stock. So obviously new homes now are pretty energy efficient. They can use the latest technology. They can use ground source heat pumps, air source heat pumps, which everyone's talking about. They don't really work on older stock. Most of our stock is older Victorian stock. It's poorly insulated. The Warm Homes Plan was all about improving the insulation values of those properties. A poorly insulated property doesn't really work with an air source heat pump. I can tell you that now, because air source heat pump don't heat water as boilers do to 60, 70, 80 degrees, maybe 30, 40 degrees. So if your home's poorly insulated, you just can't get enough heat into the home. It will escape. So without addressing that and insulating those homes, we're always going to be up against it. So Starmer, yeah, clearly he's read the runes, and his future chancellor has said we just don't have the money to do this. But on the other side of the coin, Claire Coutinho was in the news on Monday, and it looks like the Tories are rolling back on their commitments as well. So they were going to introduce a tax effectively on boiler producers to say, well, for every gas boiler you sell, you need to pay us £3,000. So basically a penalty for selling gas boilers in comparison to air source heat pumps. That doesn't work, because unless older properties are well insulated, an air source heat pump isn't going to work for a lot of people. That whole strategy of here's £7,500 grant for an air source heat pump. Well, if your property is poorly insulated, actually you're going to need to do far more work than that 7,500. And to bring an example, we have one of our clients looked into this. It was, okay, 7.5k grant, great, I'll apply for that, which should in theory pay for the air source heat pump. Actually, the additional costs on top of that doubled that amount. So you're looking at 15 to 20k. That was probably a decent sized 4-bedroom property. So the figures don't stack up from either side. So clearly Starmer's in the spotlight at the moment, but I think next week, if the Tories do announce they're getting rid of the boiler tax, then they'll be in the spotlight. And I think neither side has got to grips with what we do with our existing housing stock. Okay. I don't really have an answer, if I'm honest.
No, well, I'll stop you there, Ian. Thanks ever so much for giving us a really good, insightful piece there. I just think the government's broke, and I think Starmer and everybody else has realised that everyone's broke. And I think a lot of the thing about the next budget, I reckon it's going to go on defence. I really do. I think they're going to open up the budget for that. But anyway, thanks ever so much for that, Ian. Let's go over to you, Heath. Heath, what have you picked out from the papers today, please, or the media?
So from the Times business section today, I'm looking at a story about retailers backtracking on free deliveries and free returns, which is obviously something interesting for me working on the high street. I think there's been, for the last 10 years or so, you've got places like ASOS and Boohoo.com who have offered free returns for things that you buy online. Obviously, that's got a sustainability issue as well, because these things have to be delivered and likely in diesel-powered vans and lorries around the country. And obviously, you've got fast fashion as well. It's encouraging that. What retailers are looking at is the additional costs that this is bringing to their business of free returns, and they are looking at charging people to return items again. I know a couple of online retailers are already doing that, or what they're doing is free returns, taking it back into the store. From my point of view, that's great, because it's bringing people into the town centre, and you hope that they'll go do either additional shopping or go to a restaurant, go buy a coffee, that sort of thing. So it's very interesting that online isn't the be all and end all at the moment, and actually the high street might be on the return.
I totally agree. And the other thing is obviously people buying the stuff, wearing it, and then posting it back.
Yeah.
Massive problem.
Yeah, wear it once, yeah, still with the tags on, and then send it back, and then it obviously gets sent on to someone else, and same thing happens.
Okay, no, really good point. Have you picked out any other story? You got a minute left?
Another one is Soho House, obviously quite a trendy establishment in London and worldwide. They've lost about $1 billion off their share price in the last few months. Obviously, the peak they were valued at 3 billion. Yeah, it looks like they might be in a bit of trouble at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay. Thanks ever so much for that, mate. Great bunch of stories. Okay, Enzo, what have you picked out from us from the papers, please?
Well, the one headline that grabbed my attention was Viagra and 6 more surprising things that may boost memory.
Oh, okay.
So as I was reading through the article, I was interested in the fact that dark chocolate and red wine can improve brain function. So that was a big tick for me. But then reading on and on, I was a bit disappointed with the whole article that and its value when they say standing on one leg is great for brain health.
Can you not stand on one leg anymore, Enzo? I read somewhere that you should brush your teeth standing on one leg. And I tried that, right? The old idea was that's really good for your, memory and stuff. So I was standing on one leg, brushing my teeth one morning, and it, I actually got the toothpaste down the wrong. I swallowed it down the wrong hole and it choked. Have you ever swallowed toothpaste? It's bloody painful. Anyway, so red wine, dark chocolate, all good.
Did you only try that toothbrushing thing once?
Yes, it was enough.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it again. Have you got anything else?
Yes, and then the suit is back again. So, I mean, for me, I've spent the last sort of 4 years wearing shirts and t-shirts, even at work. In fact, every day of the week. And then I sort of progressed into, because of the colder months, I put a jumper on now, and I'm actually wearing long trousers, jeans. But if we were doing this interview 4 or 5 years ago, we'd probably all gents would be wearing a shirt and tie. And there's a couple of us here with a shirt on, but they're more casual than business-like. So I don't know what your views are on bringing the suit back and even wearing a tie every day.
Well, I quite like it. If you want to know the truth, I haven't really changed. I bet Ian hasn't really changed. I think you're always smart, aren't you, Ian?
I haven't worn a suit for about 10 years, Mark.
Do you not?
I've got 2 suits which are in the wardrobe gathering dust. So I must admit, most of our clients, with a few exceptions, don't tend to be wearing shirt and ties these days. So I'm sorry, Enzo, I'll have to disagree. I think the suit is dead in my world anyway. Maybe if you're in the centre of the city. But yeah, I don't think it's coming back anytime soon.
I think it's about sectors. Go on, Heath. Obviously, you do a lot of networking and stuff. You're out and about, seeing all the great and the good at Cheltenham.
I think there's a time and a place. Most networking events I go to, I'll probably put on a suit, especially if I'm the one hosting it. However, yeah, most of my day-to-day is in either jeans or chinos and a smart shirt, which I quite like, actually, not being all suited and booted all the time. But it's also quite nice to actually look smart and put on the suit every now and then. I
like to put on a suit because it makes me just stay focused and professional. But there you go. Otherwise, they go off on the back somewhere.
It makes me look professional by putting one on.
Rachel, do you reckon suits are coming back? Because you see lots of people.
As a woman, I do quite often wear a suit, usually in a skirt and jacket, sometimes a suit. I agree with Heath. It rather depends on the situation. I really enjoy when I'm having a day off, then it'll be jeans and a jumper. But most of the time, I'm smart casual or smart, but it depends what I'm doing.
Well, I would imagine you're lucky you decide your wardrobe.
Always have a dog collar.
Well, I was going to say. Thanks so much for that.
No time.
Thanks so much for that, Enzo. Come on, Rachel, we'll go over to you. What have you picked out from the media, please?
Well, a couple of stories. I'm also the Anglican Bishop for Prisons in England and Wales, and I always get very worked up when I see stories about prison sentences. So in the news this week, there's been the story about the government saying that there'll be a 3-month prison sentence for those who climb on war memorials. And we have this again and again with things about we're going to give short prison sentences. It is not the answer. Our prisons are absolutely overflowing. And we need to be looking at how we're dealing in our criminal justice system. These things are not a deterrent. All the evidence shows that even if you bring in prison sentence for people carrying a knife, that again has been in the stories this week, it does not deter people. We are not looking at why people do these things. And if you're going to climb on a war memorial, I absolutely agree it's the wrong thing to be doing. Give people a good fine, give them some community service. Do not put them in our prisons. They'll go to prison for 3 months, probably learn more about crime in prison. It will not deal with the issue. And our prisons, we need to be asking, what are our prisons for? And I want to say our prisons should be about rehabilitation. So that's one of the stories that really caught my eye. I get very incensed about people just thinking prison sentence is the answer.
What is
the other one?
Can I just ask, what is the local prison here in Gloucestershire? Because I'm not too sure.
So in the diocese, we have 2. We have the women's prison at Eastwood Park, and then we have Ley Hill Prison, which is a men's prison. And I spend a lot of my time going into prisons. I could give you all sorts of stats about people in prison, how many have been in care, how many people are illiterate in our prisons.
Well, quickly, give us some stats really quickly. Well,
you might be surprised to know that in a male prison, probably about 40% of those men spent time in care. Children who have a parent who goes to prison, if you're a boy, 50% of those boys will end up in prison themselves. So what are we doing we're never breaking into generational cycles. And one of the really big things is if we want to make our streets safer, which all our governments in their manifestos say we're going to be tough on crime because we want to make our streets safer and our communities safer. Do you know, people in prison, our rate of reoffending is extremely high because actually we want to make safer communities, stronger neighbourhoods. We have to look at upstream what is actually causing people to commit crime. We have to be looking at victims of crime. What we're doing at the moment isn't serving victims well either. We need a much more holistic system. And I should declare that I sit in the House of Lords, so I spend a lot of time talking on criminal justice, as well as some of the other things we've touched on today as well.
Okay, well, thanks so much for giving a really, really good insight into that as well. Just very quickly, Rachel, what other story have you picked out? 30 seconds.
So on the when you showed the papers, if you scrolled a bit further down on the Telegraph along with other papers continues this horrific story where the government is making a very cheap shot at the Church of England, as if somehow the Church of England is responsible for asylum issues. Actually, it's really important to say that it's the government who controls our borders. It is down to the Home Office to deal with the horrific backlog of asylum cases, and the Church of England will deal with baptism and with sacramental care. But the idea that the Church of England is somehow baptizing lots and lots of people in order to help their asylum claims has no evidence to it. And I think has been a really cheap shot from various MPs and people in Parliament who are really distracting from the fact that they are not dealing with, the Home Office is not dealing with what it should be doing.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much for that as well, Richard. I thought it was very well put. Okay, Ian, let's go over to you. Let's talk about the sort of building sector and access well, let's talk about your sector.
Buildings.
I lost my train of thought there. Sorry.
Okay, so we're building surveyors and planning consultants as well. So we see a wide spread across the industry. I guess ever since lockdown, we've seen certainly on my side a move more towards professional work, as we call it, so surveys. The access side of the business is still strong. I think equality has come more to the fore now, and that would cover gender neutrality as well as disability, which is what we've been doing for 20 odd years. In terms of the wider market, there's still lots of challenges. Enzo will know more than me about mortgage rates and what our friends Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng did a couple of years ago, costing everyone about £300 in the pocket on their mortgage every month, which certainly dampened things down. I think the market seems to have settled down, but in terms of the larger developments, its viability is the issue, because finance costs more. Tender price inflation is still running pretty hot, so it's costing more to build day one in terms of bricks and mortar. It's costing more to borrow money to build, so that just affects viability, because an investor buying a property at the end of the chain is looking for a return on their investment, and of course rates aren't going up. Heath can tell you about that. I don't know. I'm not up to speed with the retail market particularly, but I'm guessing if you asked a landlord, they'd say rents are pretty depressed in the retail market. They're quite depressed in the office market because everyone's working from home. I looked at some of those statistics today, and it's now 13% of people are working from home in comparison to 4% before lockdown. So there's still a move there. And I think we talked recently, I work in London quite a bit in large offices, and the difference between a Thursday and a Friday is marked. Yeah, London on a Thursday is very busy. It's still sardines in the tube. Friday, there's no one there. There really isn't anyone there. You go into most offices, I reckon it's about 20% occupancy. So there's still some big challenges out there, but I think it's the cost of borrowing and cost of building is still depressing the market for actually getting things done and getting things built.
Well, I'm glad you added in about the cost of building, because we've got some big investment things going on in construction sites here in Gloucester, and no one really wants to talk about the money. The Forum, which is massive, obviously Debenhams, the old Debenhams, they're going to be the new university. They're big projects. They must be costing an absolute fortune. I cannot see them sticking to any kind of budget, actually, and it's something that we'll definitely be looking into. But
yeah,
sorry.
No, and particularly with the Forum, all those things are interlinked. The cost of borrowing the money to build it, the cost of building it, and then what you can rent it for at the end of the process. And obviously they're all interlinked, because the more it's costing you to build it, the more it's costing you to actually finance it, the more you actually need to recover in rent. And clearly it's a large office development. It's going to be difficult to rent it.
Well, we'll see, won't it? It's £35 a square foot, apparently. Okay, thanks ever so much for Ian, which I believe is more than in Cheltenham. Heath, let's go over to you. I think Ian's brought you very nicely into as a link, actually, with property rental costs in Cheltenham. What are they like at the moment?
Depends on the property. So high streets, we are seeing it actually perform really well. So either rents are staying the same or going up. So we have had a couple of instances where retailers who have been there a long time can't afford the new prices. So they've had to leave and a new business has come in. But there are other places around in the town centre, depending on the building, which they are being let out at a very reduced price. So it just really depends where it is in the town centre and what type of building it is.
And how is the town centre performing? How is Cheltenham going? Because obviously we just heard the news Cavendish House is closing. How do you think that's going to affect Cheltenham? Obviously a big void there.
It's going to be a big void, but to be honest, for the last 3 years or so, it's been dying very slowly. I don't know if any of you have been in the last 3 years since Mike Ashley took over as freighter. It's been so depressing going in. It's been empty, especially if you go upstairs to the top floor. It's really difficult to buy stuff in there because they just don't have the sizes, they don't have the choice, they don't have enough staff in there. So it has been dying very slowly. There has been work happening in the background over the last couple of years. So it's not that it's been a surprise that they are leaving. There's a lot happening between Cheltenham Borough Council, Canada Life, who own the building, and obviously the bid as well. So things do happen in the background, but it's obviously disappointing. There will be obviously a gap in the promenade for some time whilst the plans progress.
No, I totally agree. I went back there as well. I went there. It's really depressing, really depressing. Just very quickly, obviously the observation wheel is coming back to Cheltenham. What does that mean for you? And what is it? Is there a big uptick? And obviously February's coming along, footfall figures, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so the observation wheel opens tonight. So we've got a networking event and a launch party, like an event later this afternoon to launch it with Hazelwoods, who sponsored the big wheel. Nice little link to your sponsor there, Mark. Yeah, so we'll be open until the 9th of March. Sorry, 4th of March, I should say. 9th of Feb to the 4th of March, the observation wheel is open. It brings about 10% extra into the town centre. And just to compare it, so January, Cheltenham Town Centre did 4% better than 2023. And over Christmas, we were, again, 4.4% better than 2022. So town's doing well, we're performing well, people are coming in. We just hope that they're spending money from what we hear from retailers and especially hospitality. People are spending money at the moment. It's very interesting. Cheltenham is performing well when you compare to some of my colleagues in other bids around the country. We're very fortunate to live in such a nice town.
No, couldn't be more right there. Oh, thanks ever so much for giving us the lowdown there. Enzo, let's go over to you, please, mate. Obviously, the housing market is a big part of the economy. How's it sort of looking now? You know, mortgage rates and things like this.
Well, as Ian mentioned earlier, we when Liz Truss came into power, September-ish 22, interest rates in the mortgage market went sky high. But we saw a steady progress in business throughout 23 and rates stabling somewhat. This year we've had some amazing news from lenders where they cut product rates, and the activity in the market has gone through the roof for us. So I can't believe how quickly we've got very busy this year. So long may that continue.
Sort of what sort of deals are we looking at now?
So if you go back to September 22, you could have probably got a 5-year fixed rate for around the 1% mark, which was incredibly low. And then overnight they jumped up to nearer 6 and 7%. And right now, so a year or so on from that, a 5-year fixed rate you can pick up with a 3 at the start, so 3 point something to 4 point something, which is a much more attractive position for mortgage borrowers than it was a year ago.
And that, of course, feeds back into the high street as well, and everything else circulates, doesn't it? At the end of the day, more people got more money in their pocket. They go out to the high street, spend a bit more money, and all the rest of it. Okay, thanks ever so much for that, Enzo. Right, we'll go over to you, Rachel. I've got to ask, actually, because lots of people do. People don't really know nowadays, because maybe they don't go to church so much. How to refer to you? Is it Bishop Rachel? I met the Imam. You call it Imam Hassan. What do you like? What do you think people should do, Rachel? Because sometimes
out and about, people refer to me as Bishop Rachel. It's my title. If I'm in meetings like this, when I'm with colleagues, I'm very happy just being called Rachel. But I'm actually quite interested in picking up on what people have just said just now about property. People can be very stereotyped about what they think the church is about. And across the Church of England, in Gloucestershire and beyond, actually, yes, rooted in our faith, in wanting to share God's love and hope, we are very involved in the wider community, and I want worshipping communities to be involved in that. And interestingly, just pick up from what Heath was saying about the House of Fraser building in Cheltenham, you may not be aware that the House of Fraser building in Cirencester has been taken on by an organisation called the Grace Network, which are part of our diocesan family. And so with the Diocese of Gloucester, Grace Network have taken on that building, which will be used for social enterprise. Grace Network already have a building in Stroud, Brimpscombe Mill, which operates as a social enterprise, food at the centre, furniture project, kids stuff, which is all about enabling people of all stories, ages and backgrounds to be part of that circular, as someone does refer to. Actually, how do we enable all people to flourish? So I think watch this space with the Cirencester building. But also you may not be aware that we are heavily involved in this diocese with property and how we use our land and buildings to create housing, which would include social housing, so new housing estates. And actually, we as a diocese have been helping the Church of England across the country look at their land and buildings and say, how do we use these for the good of the community? So actually, we are heavily involved in property. So I just thought it was quite interesting as we're having that discussion. And even in terms of our traditional church buildings, how are they used for the good of the community, particularly in our villages? Even as we're talking now, there'll be people setting up for toddler groups and cafes and after school clubs and places where young people can gather. And for me, that's all about how the church actually is sharing the love and hope of Jesus Christ with the wider community, wanting all people to flourish. So that's really at the heart of who I am as bishop.
Can I ask you, thank you for that. How many properties are we talking about here? How big is the estate, and how many people live in the church?
I'm hopeless with statistics, but across the Diocese of Gloucester, which starts just north of Bristol and stops just south of Stratford upon Avon, we have about 400 church buildings. We have 117 schools, which are there to serve everyone. Again, rooted in Christian faith and Christian values, and there to serve people of all faiths and no faith. So that's a huge part of who we are. And what we often don't realise is that those church buildings throughout the diocese are not supported by government funding. People think they are. The money we have to keep those historic buildings open and used comes from local people. And people who worship there. And it's an increasingly real huge pressure, you know, in the same way that the National Trust, I'll give a plug there, Mark, for your collecting of phones in that National Trust project of recycling phones. You know, the National Trust look after historic buildings. We have heritage buildings that are looked after with government funding. That is not true of our church buildings. And people, as an outcry, if ever there's a discussion about we might need to close a church building, which we never want to do, but actually people have to recognise that there is no government funding for that.
No, and of course you've got like any business, in some ways, a smaller client base. You know, people don't go to church so much. I think, though, that's a discussion for another day because we're running out of time. Thanks ever so much for that insight, Rachel. Okay, let's go back over to you, Ian. What stories have you picked out from? Pick of the punchlines, please. But we'll have to be quick, guys. So we'll just rattle through them. What have you got for us, Ian?
Okay, very quickly. Story Barrett buying Redrow. I think you pitched that as good news. Probably very good news for Barrett and Redrow and their shareholders. I don't think it's good news for people trying to get on the housing market, though. We've already got the top eight or 10 developers control the majority of land in the country. So we're now whittling that down to even less. So I'm hoping the Mergers and Monopolies Commission will take a look at that, but I haven't heard anything about that in the press yet. So yeah, again, you'll just control of land and new homes. You're putting it into an even smaller pot than it was already.
All right, really good, interesting take on that. Thanks ever so much for that, Ian. Heath, what have you picked out from Punchline, please?
The U-turn from the charging for parking in the Haywood Road car park in Forest of Dean. Cheltenham doesn't have enough free parking in the town centre. Obviously, it's a good money earner for both councils, so the county council and borough council. To be honest, car parks are full during the peak times and the weekends, so it makes sense that they charge during those times. But it would be nice to have some free parking during the quieter periods, so say a Monday afternoon, where you could just pop in for half an hour or so collect some things, and then go off. But we'll see. It's one of those things where councils are struggling for money at the moment. So I'd love to see the introduction of some free parking in the town centre just for short-term stay.
I totally agree. And in Forest Dean has always been very reasonable for parking as well. Of course, they struggle. Go to some of the towns out there as well. Okay, thanks ever so much. So I'm going to go to you, Enzo. What have you picked out from this week's Punchline, please?
You had a couple of articles promoting investment in retail. So the one I'm looking at is Primark to invest millions in UK stores, 100 million that they're looking to invest. I'd be interested, Heath talked about retail earlier. There's been a lot about the decline of retail, but it's nice to see and hear stories about investment and hopefully keep our high streets alive.
Yeah, and Primani, they just go from strength to strength, let's be honest. Is that a Primani jumper, Enzo?
I don't think I can fit into a Primani.
Apparently, Primani's going up market, it really is. I read in the Times recently, dresses for 50 quid or whatever. Anyway, thanks ever so much for that, mate. Bishop Rachel, what have you picked out from this week's Punchline, please?
So I picked out the story of the exhibition as part of Gloucester's anti-violence campaign that was there on the 6th of February. The 100 heroines and the Gloucester-based museum having this exhibition, different artists, really focusing on gender-based violence. That's happening next week in King's Walk, and it links in, as the article says, with the anti-violence bee tour. There will be the bee made out of lots of different weapons, knives, that's made into this beautiful bee that will be in the city centre in Gloucester and also outside the cathedral, just really focusing on this whole issue of violence and particularly gender-based violence.
No, thank you very much for that. And yes, it should be absolutely amazing. All these sorts of sculpture things that we're having come, like the world and the moon and things like that, are just awesome, aren't they? If you get a chance to go down and have a look. My story, the pick of the Punchline this week, has to be the story about Neil Ricketts, the former CEO of Viserion, who founded his own company, has taken the business to court for unfair dismissal. I think we'll be watching the space very, very carefully and following that story. So I'd just like to thank our fantastic panel this week for a great discussion, our wonderful viewers for watching, and also our brilliant sponsors, Hazelwood's Accountants and Business Advisors. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you like the show, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll be back again next week. And remember, it's all in the Punchline. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye.